Couple minutes past 10:30, so I'm going to reconvene the Citizens Redistricting panel. Everybody that were here this morning is still here, so we don't need to do another roll call. Let's try to finish the rotating chair discussion carryover from yesterday. Do we have a list of all those who are interested in the rotating chair? Mr. Claypool, do we have a list of all the individuals who are interested in the rotating chair position or the chair position?
We do. Is it? Did Ann give you the list there?
Oh, I'm sorry. I do have it. I apologize. Does everybody have a copy now? Oh, not yet.
Fortunately, we had an even number, and so if you just follow the columns, right now we have as the chair, Commissioner Yao, and the vice chair is Commissioner Dye. The next rotation, we'll have Commissioner Dye as the chair and Commissioner Ward as the vice chair, and then it just staggers forward as you see through the list. And then it just goes back up and repeats itself unless anyone wishes to add themselves to the list, and at that time we would have to deal with it then.
All right. Any additions to the list?
I would just add that, you know, if we're looking at the schedule moving forward and someone is going to be absent for some reason, we can just make an adjustment at that point and make sure we're still doing boy, girl, boy, girl.
Can you send us this in an email, as an attachment to an email, so we could just keep it?
I'll ask Ann to do that.
Actually, may I suggest that we start posting these as docs so that we don't have so many attachments in our email?
Or what, yeah, something.
Oh, okay, we'll just post it, and then you can refer to it.
I think on each of the poster agenda, we probably need to properly identify who's the chair, who's the vice chair as well, as we post the new agenda.
Okay.
All right, so the way I read it is for the next meeting, Cynthia is the chair and Commissioner Ward is the vice chair, and then the first meeting in February, Commissioner Ward will be the chair and Connie will be the vice chair, and on down the line.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other considerations or questions? All right, I don't think this constitutes a decision, so I don't think we need to receive public comment on this. It's strictly an operational detail, so. All right, thank you. Let me, go ahead. We have one dead microphone. I wonder if we can get some assistance with the microphone. In the meantime, maybe we can just pass the closest microphone around so we continue the meeting. At this point, I'd like to have our executive director to give us a report and his plan, including staffing, subcontracting anything that he wishes to address this commission.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Claypool?
Thank you. I apologize for not having a handout because first of all, this was done very late last night and very early today, and along with thoughts that I've had. I have looked at this, or I've considered the staff we need versus the different tasks that were provided yesterday, and the discussion we've had, and also the travel schedule that is being considered by the commission. We have already hired clearly myself. We will have the discussion for the chief counsel next week. I believe that next week we can schedule the communication officer interviews if the commission is ready to hear them or to review them and hear those interviews. And then we have a fourth position of admin assistant. Beyond that, I think that our chief counsel is going to need assistance, at least staff assistance, and that assistance would be at what the state would refer to as a staff service manager 1 level. That's the least level that I consider would be appropriate there. We're going to need an administrative director, someone who can be here and run the staff while we're out in the field or when I'm with you. That person I consider has to be at an SSM2 level. And there will be next week you'll be considering a salary schedule, and then you'll be able to attach some numbers to this. But these are, when we think of the staff services level in state government, we think of a level of individuals who have risen to a point where they're competent, highly competent in the jobs that they do, and have handled great responsibility or responsibility, and they have also generally supervised staff at some time in their point. So this is a mid, if you will, mid-manager position, but it is a position that we need to ensure that we get the things done that you are going to ask them to do. We're going to need an executive secretary, just a reception person, kind of a doorkeeper for us over there to keep track of all the people that are going to want to get a hold of you. Our communications officer will need a web technician, someone who can manage our website and more quickly post the things that we're lagging behind on right now. That would be at an associate government program analyst level. That's the step below our managerial level within the state. They will also need, the communications officer is going to need an additional assistant to just keep track of the many different things that they're going to try to do and all the people that they're going to reach out to. Second, if you will, category or box moving down from the administrative director will be the contract and accounting individual who keep track of our budget, our travel expense claims, our procurements, our payroll, our human resources. That again is at an SSM1 level, the staff service manager level. A third person will be our hearing and meeting coordinator. This person will also be a staff service manager position, but supervisory. That individual is going to need to have at least 2 technical persons working for them at the AGPA level, and then an additional AGPA to assist in the coordination of your travels, of all of our travels, of all of the different places we're going, setting up the venues, ensuring that everything runs correctly when you're in the field and that things are rotated back to staff in Sacramento for posting onto the website. And finally, we're going to need just a contract manager to handle the RFI and RFP, so the request for information and request for proposal that we're going to put out, and then be a liaison for us with the different people that are providing us contract services. All total, we're looking at, if you approve this, we're looking at 14 people, in addition to the individuals you've already hired for a staff for a total staff, including the council, myself, and the administrative assistant, and the public officer of 18 people on your staff. Comments?
Well, Dan, I'm a little alarmed because I don't think our budget can support 18 people. I also think a lot of these are very, defined roles, and I think we're going to need to hire people who can do a lot of different things and wear a lot of different hats. And have you considered looking at temps and contracted services? I mean, I can't imagine having a full-time person just doing expense reports.
Well, the key when we hired staff for the initial part of this project, the key to their job description was the other duties as defined. No one ended up doing what they were placed in. The contract person, or the person you're referring to, more of the administrative person, just keeping track of the finances, the budgets, and so forth. That will be a full-time job. I mean, more than I realize we can kind of single that one out, but more than any other position, the flood of your travel expenses, the floods of bills that come in, the projecting the budget and where the budget's at, and also that's the person that ultimately is going to put together the justification for any augmentation or any additional funds that we request. So a fairly key person. We have the ability in this to pick people up and lay people off. I mean, it's not no one, including I believe including myself, serving at your pleasure. No one will be married to their job. Having said that, I just looked at the number of people that we had stationary in Sacramento working on just handling the application process, something a fairly straightforward process. And at times, we would be up to 24, 28 people just handling just the communications, the things that you're talking about wanting to have done. When you go into when you start having the public hearings, many of the staff will be traveling with you. Certainly, you're going to have someone similar to Ann to be there to just coordinate the information that will be flowing back and forth. As far as budget goes, most of these people are at the AGPA level, 6 of them. I shouldn't say most. 6 of them are at the AGPA level. One of them, the executive secretary, have an expense, but it's not a great expense when you start looking at these salary levels. Yes, it's going to move you very quickly up into a fairly high range for the year, but I don't know how else to do without them. Now we could, you're suggesting temporary positions, but with temporary positions, we will be basically at the mercy of who's ever available at the time, and we could be switching a lot of people in and out. Now, I'm not opposed to working with temp agencies and trying to work it that way, but I believe that what it will do is it will always put us a little bit behind in our work. And so some of these positions, for instance, our web technical person, we have to have that person. Yeah. It's hard for me to imagine how the communications officer will also be able to handle all the things that we're going to ask that person to do if they don't also have an assistant, because typically the web tech is devoting most of their time to that. And then I just go across and I'd say, we have to have somebody who's coordinating this field travel because I can set it up, but if I'm out there with you and you start to divide up into teams, it's going to be very difficult for me to then handle anything that's going wrong on the other side.
Can I just bother you to I missed some of those.
Sure.
And the level.
Okay, so, and again, what I would like to do is if we have a discussion here, I could try to put this together in some format so that you can actually see it, and I think it's a little more understandable. But if you just think of a flow chart, at the top is the commission, and then you drop down to myself. And at that level, at that first level, you're hiring a chief counsel, and that chief counsel would be assisted, would have some sort of assistant to help them with the things that they're going to do. You would drop, I would have an administrative assistant, and then you drop down to just an admin director, a person that would keep track of the things that are going on here in Sacramento, a receptionist, and then below that are just 4 boxes. One is our communications officer with their web tech and their AGPA assistant. One of them is the contract and accounting budget person. One of them is a hearing meeting coordinator, and that person would have 2 technicians and an AGPA. And then below that is a contract manager. So I actually would say that that's a total of 13.
You mentioned a overall manager?
I gave this title, basically a person and a staff manager 2 position that would be someone, I called him an admin director, but that's a person that's just going to be here, just coordinating everything that's coming in and making sure that everyone is staying on page.
Like an office manager?
Office managers are like
Dan,
that.
is there an overall number you have of what we're looking at in the way of expenditures for that staff?
You know, I can work that up. I hesitated to do that until you approved your salary schedule, because I don't want to work with numbers that you haven't approved. If you're willing to take a ballpark figure on what that would cost, and knowing that it's going to, you may yourselves change the salary structure, then I could do that, but I didn't do that for this
I
exercise.
think a ballpark, and then we know whether
Yeah.
we're
Sure.
in trouble budget-wise or not.
Yeah.
Okay?
Exhaust our resources. We still have to hire consultants.
Is it all right if we bring back that information the next time we meet? Or would you like to time out to do that now? Commissioner Barava?
I'm sorry.
I just, if it's, I could wait, yep.
My only concern is some of these positions seem like positions we need in place soon.
Yes.
And start hiring.
Um,
So
mhm.
maybe today, regardless of what the total ballpark is, we could agree to some key positions that we could start the hiring process on that we may all agree are essential.
Certainly.
And then still get the ballpark figure, and if there are some that there's some discussion about, we don't move on those so quickly.
Okay, so I should say that that I have a selection for the assistant, admin assistant, or a group of people that I intend, with your permission, to interview early in the week. I have tentatively made an offer to a person that would be that office manager, and introduced him earlier to the chair and the vice chair, and he's clearing right now. His name is Raul Villanueva, and he is coming out of retirement in order to work with us. He worked with the applicant review panel. And then certainly have one of the AGPAs selected. So I would say right now we can, if the first thing that Raul will do will be to get out the job flyers so that we can get a response. We're not restricted by the typical state requirement that even that we I think send out just a job description and so forth, or have testing. We're only so we don't have that restriction. So I think that these positions can be filled very quickly if we can find the qualified people to do them, and I think they're available. So.
Mr. Claypool,
Okay, then the only issue then will be that you have to vote on every hire. So once these people are available, we would have to just get a vote for it.
you had a kind of a staff level or a grade level assignment for each of these positions.
Right.
And there's obviously then an associated range, salary range that's assigned for that grade, time and grade, correct?
Exactly.
So is there any reason we wouldn't be able to get just a projected idea of what each of these positions will cost by the end of the day, being that those numbers are readily available? So we could get a kind of an idea total of what we're looking at?
Sure. I can give you an estimate. I give you an estimate by month, and I can give you a 1-year estimate for these within that time frame. But the salary schedule that I'm going to use is going to be one that you haven't approved. So as long as the commission is okay with that structure, then
We're talking about using a structure that's accepted, generally accepted for
yes. Oh,
all
absolutely.
government employees of
Mhm.
this expected time and grade, correct?
Exactly.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Excuse me, I have another question.
Go ahead.
If we're hiring retired annuitants, is that at less cost to us than hiring someone for whom we have to provide benefits and so on?
It is less of a cost, but it then also becomes problematic in two regards. First of all, retired annuitants have a 960-hour limit that switches over at the fiscal year. So in one regard, if we were to find someone that was qualified, then it wouldn't be a problem and they still had many of their hours left, because a lot of the most qualified individuals would have been running their 960 hours out, including Raul, who has no hours left. We're fortunate that he was willing to. He's basically circumventing being a retired annuitant by coming out of retirement to do this. And so he runs some risks himself because of some of the PERS policies that go with that decision. I'm sorry, but he's excited about doing this. I'm sorry, he's excited about doing this, and he doesn't mind that prospect. Having said that, so we have the second thing with the RAs is that they're a much smaller pool when you start looking at them. And so we would have to take more time and interview them to know what we're getting. So we can do that, but I don't know, quite honestly, whether in the great scheme of things, that additional incurred cost with PERS should be the thing that drives us. We need staff.
I would just like to add that I agree that I think there are some necessary positions that we need to fast track. But personally, I would like to see everything we've just laid out, flow chart, job positions, but also a description of what you envision being the job duties of each position, and then again with that scaled salary on it before I just can't
Right.
deliberate on it till we have that.
That's perfectly reasonable, and if I would, just for clarification, the ballpark figure today, but the rest of that, it would have to be at our next meeting, because I can't get all of that done during lunch.
Could we get it sent out during the week, and that way we'd be ready to take action on that on Wednesday?
Certainly. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't a Bagley-Keene restriction.
I don't know either.
Okay?
It's just the normal Bagley-Keene restriction. If we send it out, you don't get on the phone and talk to each other and say, well, we're going to cut this one. You just don't do that stuff, as you normally would. But as long as we post it, we can send it out to you as soon as it's done and be ready to take it up when you are at the next meeting. We keep the agenda item that we have that allows us to hire staff. In the best of all worlds, Dan could hire the staff. And he's you can empower him to whatever degree you want in terms of selection, but you have to vote and you have to have a supermajority for staff and consultants. It's just, that's the way it is.
Thanks, Dan.
Dan, are there 2 or 3 jobs that you would like to get going on right now so that we could maybe just approve 2 or 3 and then we could come back to that later, the rest of them at a later date?
Yes, certainly this office manager position is very, very key to me because whether or not we restructure this and downsize the number of people that we use to assist us, that person just has to be in place. If we only had one person over there besides him, if we only had one person over there, it would have to be a person that had that function. And so I would also say that it's possible to streamline this by some people, but this was, and originally I had a number in my mind that was less than this. This number is really flowing out of the number of meetings you wish to have and just the complexity that occurs with each meeting. And so if we go to 80 from the 50, then I would say, well, I need a couple more people. Because it's just that much that has to be done, and that's what we'd have to do.
Yeah, I would just want to, I agree with going forward with a couple of critical positions that we can all agree on, but I'd really want to look at using local temporary labor, particularly for setting up venues and things like that. I think there's a lot of experience from other organizations that have done a lot of outreach of just using temps to do that kind of work rather than flying somebody all over the place. So I would like to look at that maybe at the next meeting, but I think we should move forward with a couple of critical positions. So who else would you identify as critical?
I think anything I'd like to see on the list is how long are the duration of these jobs with each job, because some of these jobs are going to be fairly short-term, it seems to me. Others will be longer. So it'd help me to turn to how much money we're actually going to end up spending if we knew the duration.
Okay, and I can try to attach some time limits to these, although for most of these individuals, I would think that they are on for the duration through you actually having the maps. But if I were going to identify individuals that we needed immediately, we need a web technician, very much so. We need the office manager that I spoke about, and we need to bring on someone that has a budget background to start working up the plan for making the request for the augmentation. So those would be the 3 people that I would say are most critical in this plan to me.
What's the third? No, and so there's the office manager, the budget, and
Web.
Web.
Can we make that just a general IT person? Because I would think this person would not only need to be familiar with the web, but also with mobile technologies as well.
What I would just hope for is whoever that person is may have to be the person that ends up doing all the other 2 positions that I was talking about. The 2 other technicians. The Secretary of State identified in a hierarchy 3 positions that needed to be filled, and that's how I came out to that number. They said that we absolutely had to have somebody who maintained the web. We needed somebody that could take care of your day-to-day problems and go out and make sure. And when we're talking about staff, by the way, out in the field, I never envisioned much more than 2 people out of these at any given venue. But you have to have somebody that can just take care of the general problems that you're going to have. And oftentimes, I know that we're placing a high degree of reliance on different organizations out at these venues doing work for us. But quite honestly, sometimes those people don't show up. Or if they do, they don't have the technical skills to really get you where you need to go. And it's, as the chairman had said earlier when we were talking about Claremont and talking about what we were asking people to do, when something doesn't work and we can't have the hearing, who's responsible for that. And so as much as possible, this plan that I've got tries to take out as many of those responsibilities as possible. Just, I'm much more comfortable if I know that we're going to have somebody there that can take care of it out in the field. But certainly the web person, if we decide that 2 other technical people aren't necessary, then that web person just has to be the most qualified person we can get our hands on.
Right.
But when that happens, then for those individuals, usually the cost goes up.
Sure, but that's still going to be cheaper than 3 people.
Okay?
I truly appreciate the importance of having a highly skilled web technician. Preferably that person would be very comfortable with, Commissioner Dye mentioned earlier, having expertise in other areas, and for example, PowerPoint, graphics, demographic charts, be able to understand information that we may at some point need for our presentations and be able to turn that around quickly. I just want to throw that out there as a particular skill set I would like to have our technical person be able to do, in addition to maintaining the website and doing all the other basic skills that one would require on that level. Perhaps we can consolidate some of those responsibilities to someone who's capable of responding to our request on that level.
Okay?
I was just going to, I know we still need to finish up the conversation about these 3 positions. I think when the number first came out, I think we all had a little bit of a gasp at the large number. But in reflecting on this, and maybe as we go on in this weekend and into early next week, as we as commissioners think about this, I do think that we all want this to be a successful endeavor. And I think we've hired Mr. Claypool knowing that he has some expertise as to what it will take for this to happen on the home front, so to speak. And we have a limited amount of time, so we have to really make sure that we have the resources and individuals that can support us. There may be some opportunities, there may be some redundancy, there may be some things we can consolidate, but I am also concerned that we want to make sure that we give ourselves the opportunity that we need to be able to accomplish our task and the support. I just see us in this last 2 days, we keep asking staff to do things, and Dan is staff, he doesn't have time, he's here with us all the time and will be, as well as many other staff. So we need to make sure we have all the aspects covered. So I guess I'm just suggesting that in this next week we reflect on that and try and find a way to keep costs under control, but also not at the sacrifice of us doing what we need to do in our limited time.
And I agree with that. I think when we look ahead of us in the next 8 to 10 months, that isn't a lot of time, and there's an immense amount of work. I think what I'm hearing Dan say is that along the way, we want to try to limit all the uncertainties that will come along the process. And I agree, Murphy's Law is going to kick in if we're not prepared. And that may cost us even more money. So I think there's a lot of validity to what Dan is saying.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Dan's plan might be perfectly reasonable. I just don't think we have enough data to really continue to talk about it at this point. So I'd like to prefer if we had tabled that and talk about the critical positions and getting those
I was just
moving.
suggesting it for something for us to keep in mind as in the next
Definitely.
week, beyond these first three.
One comment on the critical position, I'd like to add the admin position to that critical list. In other words,
He already has that first.
I don't believe so. I think we talk about the web tech, the budget person, admin director, or the
Yes.
office manager.
This is over
Is
and above
that my
before.
understanding?
Actually, no, I just automatically included the 4, myself, the admin assistant, the council, and,
Okay.
so.
I
and the public office.
I understand now.
Okay.
All right. I don't think we need to vote on this. I think we have a consensus to give you direction to move forward with these critical positions. And then I think by the time we get back early next week, we'll be able to finish the staffing decisions.
One point of one point of clarification. on the numbers that I said I would give you this afternoon, do you want that inclusive of the cost of the people that you've already, my
Yes.
salary? You want
May
the
I
whole thing?
suggest just use the midpoint of the range so that we
Right.
minimize the calculation. And number two is, again, this is a rough order magnitude type of estimate and a ballpark estimate.
Sure.
That's all we're looking for at this point in time.
But everyone, all positions, okay?
Dan, I was just also going to clarify with the panel, if we're going to send out a follow-up email that has each of these positions listed with a job description and that number, I'm okay with waiting beyond today for that, if you need more time to prepare that. I know you mentioned doing it by the end of the day, but now with the added requirements, if you need more time with that, I'm okay with that.
Okay, and when we're talking about job descriptions, this is going to be the job as I envision it, not necessarily the job description that we're going to use to tell people, because I don't have time to prepare that entire thing. That's what I was hoping to have Raul start
Yeah,
on Monday.
Basic responsibilities are fine.
Okay.
Since we won't be discussing this matter any further, can we just receive that information by email or by mail before next Wednesday?
Certainly.
And not try to push for getting data today, because I don't see the value of getting data today. We're not going to discuss this topic any further.
Now, as I understand it, if I send it to all of you by email, then it also needs to post.
No,
as well.
whatever is appropriate in terms of meeting the Beckley-Keene requirement.
Certainly.
In other words, post it on the site as necessary. It's not intended to be a private communication.
Okay.
So I don't have any issue with the office manager role. I think we're going to need someone to keep the home fires going while we're out on the road, and someone who's senior enough who can deal with emergencies and coordinate a lot of things. I don't have a problem with the web technician role. It's an absolutely critical role. I would just want that to be a very highly qualified person with multiple skills, so that they can really be our tech person for whatever our technology issues are. On the budget person, I know that when the Secretary of State had looked at it, they'd looked at actually contracting these services. And did you do a comparison on whether that was going to be, that we get fuller coverage without having a full-time person on?
Well, the Secretary of State is hiring, is going to make a presentation. Our staff at the Secretary of State will make a presentation on contract services for human relations and also for payroll and budget and so forth like that. But that's a different function. We have to present all of that to them, and then they will go through the machination of cutting the checks and so forth. But this person is essentially going to be the one that takes all of the TECs that are flowing in and then sends them across so that you get paid and so forth. So it's
Bookkeeping.
Exactly, and also keeping track of what's left and so forth. So this isn't the contracts that Ms. Mejia will be speaking to this afternoon. Pretty much are a threshold. They're a threshold for getting the second half of it done. But we have the responsibility for getting it to them in the format that will allow that to happen, and that's what this individual, a part of what their responsibility would be.
And Dan, I'm assuming that all of this will be set up at our new office. This is going to be your permanent venue.
Yes, yeah, the new office is going to accommodate both you or the commissioners when they're in town, as well as this staff, who's ever in town.
Are you going to have stationery along with our business cards?
We can certainly include stationery with this, with that. So business cards and stationery. So that's no problem.
Okay, I'm looking at a correspondence from Professor Lawson that was submitted to us on January the 17th, discussing the relationship with the statewide California officials, like the governor's office, the legislators, and so on. The next time we discuss the staffing issue, perhaps you can shed some light as to who's likely going to be that official contact between your office and each of these organizations. I do not want to jump into that discussion today, but I would like to understand as to how we're going to handle all those relationship issues.
Certainly.
All right, please go on to the next item on your list.
Wait,
Are we going to
Claypool.
approve these positions?
The three positions, we have to approve them, correct?
All right, let's do a roll call. Let me receive a motion and then do a roll call on the vote. I kind of interpret that as a direction, not necessarily needing to approve it formally, but if we feel we want to do that, then
For staffing, we do have to have a vote, though, don't we? Do we not? Supermajority to approve any staffing.
I interpret, I guess, let me get the council's opinion on this first.
As I understood, well, what I was thinking of is, what I understood you to be doing is to say, go ahead and look for people for these 4 positions. Dan will bring recommendations of people to you, Mr. Jones, Ms. Smith, so on. You will vote on those. It can be done in groups. I'm interpreting on the fly what it says, but it's pretty clear. It says that you have to approve staff through supermajority voting. I had interpreted that and what you were doing today to mean these 16's overwhelming right now. We don't have numbers, but we know you need to go and find people for this, and when we get the people, he will bring them to you, and then you will approve them or disapprove them.
With the exception of Raul, correct?
Raul's got to be voted on.
Yeah, he's already been offered a position. But, I think also implicit in this is that we're approving the rec for these positions. I mean, we don't want to just be presented the person after the fact when we're not even certain that we approve the position.
We can certainly take the approach of approving the 3 that's been specifically requested today, and then address the remaining the next time we meet, if that's the pleasure of the commission. I think that may satisfy what's before us. Would that be the proper approach to do it?
You want to vote? You want to vote on them next time?
No, I think we want to be on the record that we approve these additional positions, which will bring the total staff to 7.
Well, you
I'm
certainly
just-
can do that. I mean,
This way, we won't be holding up the work, so to speak. Decisions can be made appropriately, timely, I should say, and then we'll make the decision beyond the 7 total staff next week.
Dan, does it make a difference for how you act on filling these job positions, whether or not we take a vote and codify that we want these 3 positions? Does it make a from now till Wednesday, is there a difference in the way you can go about soliciting talent for those positions if we vote for it, or if we just acknowledge it, go for it?
The only difference would be with Mr. Villanueva himself. I have tentatively made him an offer, and he has to, because of the things he has to do with PERS, we have to make a decision, and I should say that he is here right now, and I could introduce him to you if you wish, but
You should.
okay, roll. I hate to put you on a spot, but I will. And I should give you an introduction. Raul has extensive experience in state government. He was very instrumental with the applicant review panel and as an assistant to one of our panel members. And he just has an exceptional work ethic. So this would be my choice.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Pleasure to see all of you. And a pleasure to prospectively be able to offer my services and perform work for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the executive director's request to hire Mr. Villanueva for this task.
Do we have a salary? Do we have a salary or figure?
It would be at, I can give you an approximate range because we haven't made a determination as to it. But the range would be 60.
Why don't you give us a not to exceed number? I think we can
Not
then
to,
vote
okay,
on that
not
without
to,
any
not to
problem.
exceed 6811 per month.
All right, it's been moved, and has it been second?
Second that.
All right, any further discussions? I do not see anybody else outside of Raul in the audience, so I assume you approve. So let's take a, let me try a voice vote because I don't sense there's a lot of objection to it. All those approve the motion as stated, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those who object, again, raise your hand and say aye. Abstain? All right, it's been approved unanimously. Thank you. Congratulations.
Now, for the remainder of the positions, the other two critical positions, no, it doesn't influence anything. We can get those job flyers out. And as far as the technician positions, we can assume that if we're going after a specific person, a very qualified person for this web one, if we want the other two or one, then we can modify that or use the list, because there will be qualified people that won't be the most qualified that we might think to employ. And then as far as the AGPAs, the Associate Government Program Analysts, we can get that out because it's just a list that we're going to hire the most qualified person for. We will at least have, it's unbelievable to me that we wouldn't have at least 2 or 3 of those individuals helping us in that category. So
I would suggest that we take on this matter first as the first order of business when we convene next week.
Okay.
All right.
I think there's some kind of, I don't think, it's not a motion, but there was a pending discussion about an agreement that these are the critical, that we list what the next 3 critical positions are and agree that they are that and that we'll move forward.
Right. I believe staff has that direction already. We are to receive that information ahead of the next time we meet, and we'll continue the discussion and make decisions accordingly. Is that acceptable to all the commissioners?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Claypool, you may continue to discuss your report status.
The second thing that I was asked by the chairman to do was to discuss the level of my procurement authority, my signature authority to purchase things that we need. I spoke with both the individuals here at the Secretary of State and individuals familiar with commissions, and it was basically consensus was that I need about $50,000 worth of procurement authority. That would cover, hopefully, the expense of the very expensive items that will be associated with the actual redistricting. And so I would request that I receive that level of purchasing authority.
I'll move that.
Second.
So, clarification, what we're talking about then is that anything up to $50,000, Mr. Claypool would have authority to approve and then would report to us on that expenditure. but anything more than $50,000 would have to come to us first.
Well, it's my understanding it's up to $50,000 total, or is it by contract or by individual item?
By contract?
I believe it's against the principle, against the law to try to break up a procurement into various components to try to get below the authorization limit. So I think in general, it's for the total expense and not by components.
May I ask, for sake of context, based on the conversations that you've had, what were some of the types of things that were on the higher end of that price tag?
I only went out, after I spoke with the chairman, I just went out and got a general consensus among people that I know here who have worked with commissions and just said for procurement, what's kind of the standard. So I didn't consider it in terms of the things that I would be purchasing. However, the one thing that comes to mind as I spoke with the tech person here that works for the Secretary's office, that individual said there are going to be some very expensive items that are going to be associated with the mapping and you know, big screens so that you can see how it works and so on and so forth. I'm not entirely convinced that those types of items wouldn't be provided by our consultant, that we would want to place that under contract because there's not going to be a need for us to own them. So in that regard, hopefully that will fold into some type of contract and not be an issue. If that doesn't come to mind, or if that doesn't come to be something that I need to purchase, then it's very hard for me to imagine anything reaching this threshold. So that's my...
We have the option of lowering the limit if we choose to do so. I don't believe the number is absolute in any sense.
Are we really talking about the total and not per contract? I mean, that's...
Well, maybe we should clarify that.
The total per task or per activity.
I
and
think
not-
what Chairman was talking about was the example. Personal service contracts, Department of General Services exempts most agencies when they're below $50,000. What's against the law is contracting with somebody for something that, say, costs $100,000 in reality, and then breaking that up into four $25,000 contracts to get out from under the approval authority. So I think the number may have come from that, but it's a good practical number. How you want to deal with total expenses is one thing, but if by your limit you meant that Dan can only spend $50,000, then that ought to be articulated specifically. Or if you meant that he can spend up to $50,000 per on an individual contract, if that's what you want to do. Just as long as that's clear, we're okay.
Right.
So I understand your authority, and again, I'm asking for Dan really, that he can contract for up to $50,000. How you want to approve that is up to you.
No, I mean, I think my intention, I mean, that it was his intention, was that contracts up to $50,000 he can approve without prior approval from us. And I think that, I mean, just as a general philosophical thing, is that I think you have to hire your executive director and let them do their job, and rather than micromanage them. So that was the intent of my motion.
Right,
I
right.
just wanted to
Thank
make sure
you.
it was clear.
I just got confused, yeah.
Moved in second.
It's been moved in second. Anyone in the audience would like to comment on the expenditure or authorization limit for the executive director? All right, seeing no one approaching the microphone, I'll bring it back to the commission. Any further discussion? Yes,
We have
Counsel.
one point of clarification. That does not mean consultants. So that's a different deal.
So
Yeah,
noted.
Exactly.
So noted. Thank you. All right, let's have again a voice roll with show of hands. All those in favor, or who can support the motion, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain? Seeing none on the against and abstain, has been approved unanimously. Thank you. Next item on your list, Mr. Claypool.
That is my list, sir, for this particular topic. So,
All right, anything else this commission would like to discuss in terms of how we would want to either communicate or deal with the executive director as a group or individually?
I was just going to make a suggestion that maybe we can get Ann to help with this. Our schedule of availability or unavailability, if we could get that uploaded into Google Calendar, a group calendar, so that we can all individually update it and therefore relieve you of having to track that in the future.
we will check with the Secretary of State's office, because until we get our web person, you're at the mercy of Ann and myself or the Secretary of State. But I think we can get that.
Yeah, this
completed.
doesn't require web knowledge. It's just a
Sure.
group calendar.
Anything else? All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I believe that that it might be an appropriate time for lunch.
Sounds like you're hungrier than I am. So, all right, we shall break for lunch, and I believe we have a reservation made for us at a restaurant. So we will be back at 1:15. Would that give us enough time?
Yes.
If we have a few minutes, we also like to stop by the new office that have been made available to us. I believe a number of people has not seen that. I also think that if not, then we'll try to do it at 4 o'clock this afternoon.
It will be, if the intention is to make your reservation and go, then we would need more time.
More time? All right,
that.
then we'll just go to lunch and deal with the going to the new office later on this afternoon. Then.
Would 1 o'clock be, because that's actually a fairly long time. Would 1 o'clock be enough time?
It's been suggested that an hour and a half will be closer to what we need as compared to 1 o'clock. I mean, to an hour.
It's 11:30 right now.
Oh. 11:30 to 1:30, 2 hours.
Okay.
Wait, just for lunch.
1.5.
Mr. Claypool, if we wanted to see the offices, since we're already out and about, how much additional time could we?
Let's resume the meeting at 1:30. That'll give us an adequate time. Is that the request?
If we can do that, it's a short walk. What's going to happen when we get to the space? It's not going to take you long to see it, because it's not a big space. However, what will happen is they're going to want to get all your names so that we can, and give you keys. What I would suggest is, to avoid that, we'll simply give them all your names, and then we'll tell them we'll supply that.
Okay, help me. What time do we want to reconvene this meeting? I think that's the important thing.
How long do you anticipate lunch will take with where we're going?
It's going to take you about an hour and 15 minutes.
Okay, so it's 1.
Yes.
We'll be back at 1 o'clock, and then we break at 4, so we go to the...
1 o'clock it is. So this commission will reconvene this meeting at 1 p.m. Thank you.
Too much to do.